Good morning. Thank you, Michelle, for telling me that I was muted. I swear I pushed the unmute button. Hi, I'm Lisa Treadwell. I'm a realtor with Center 21 Sheets, as all of you know. I'm going to just start all over again. This is being recorded. We're live streaming on Facebook and YouTube, so a whole bunch of people are probably watching the beginning of that video wondering why there's no sound. You are muted right now just to cut down on some of the background noise, and we've got some highlight sponsors that we're going to feature, and then we'll dive into our panel. So if you're wondering where you are, this is the Indy Senior Living Series event. We've been doing this now for 4 years. We're wrapping up our 4th year. And if you're like me, you're totally sick of being on Zoom. I am sick of it. Just a show of hands, who's sick of Zoom? Yeah, it's not the same as in person. And I think the in-person events that we have had, people are so giddy and sometimes forget how to act in public. But it's all good. I hope everybody is staying safe and healthy. So we've got our sponsors up here for the year. We want to give appreciation to all of them because there's a fee to the marketing and the work that goes into putting these events on. We're going to highlight a couple of these sponsors just since we're not in person, because in the past when we were in person, we had they could have their little sort of booth over on the side. So we're trying to highlight our sponsors, a couple each month. And this month we have Jeff Stinson as our sponsor. He's also consequently, or as our featured sponsor, and he's also on our panel. So Jeff, I'm going to give the floor over to you for a quick intro and a dive into your business a little bit deeper than what people can see up here on the screen. And then obviously you're going to be on our panel, so they'll hear a lot more from you. So take it away.
Wonderful. Well, good morning, everyone. As Lisa said, I'm Jeff Stinson. I am a certified elder law attorney, which means I can actually say I'm a specialist in elder law as certified by the National Elder Law Foundation. I'm in the northern Indianapolis area, and I'm typically working with folks who are either in a crisis. So a lot of families who say, mom and dad or my spouse needs some long-term care help, and I can't afford to pay $8,000 a month for that. So I'm helping those folks protect assets, stretch out those resources, and access other methods to help cover that care either through Medicaid or VA pension primarily. I also do a lot of estate planning with the kind of theme of how do we protect our assets from the cost of long-term care, which will be kind of the crux of what we'll talk about today. And along with that, I work with a lot of families who have special needs children, and we do a lot of planning there and kind of do your general probate work, guardianships, decedents, and trust administration. So good morning. I look forward to talking to you a little more detail here in a few minutes.
Thank you, Jeff Stinson. I have confirmed we are live on Facebook and YouTube. And we're recording this video. So don't pick your nose or turn your mic on and say something that, could be damaging. Anyway, so yes, let's go back to our sponsor page. Michelle, she's handling our PowerPoint. So if you see her looking at her computer screen like this, that's what's going on. We had, I don't see, is Laura Roman on here? I don't see her. I thought she was going to be our next highlight sponsor. Let's just go through the sponsors real quick, and everyone else just say your name and who you're with, and then we'll move into some housekeeping. So I know that I saw Misty here.
Hey, Misty Fonz with Folklore Productions.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. And I know I saw Sarah McCord got on here.
Yes, I'm here. Good morning. I'm Sarah McCord with Bright Star Care. We do in-home care wherever that may be. If it's your home, your family's home, a assisted living community, we work in all different areas. And our goal is to help you age comfortably, safely in place.
Awesome. And I saw Lisa and Dave. Do one of you? Lisa
Hi.
Chris. I don't know why I always get your last name. I know a Lisa Kellum. Anyway.
It's Lisa Curris. We're good.
Sorry about that.
No worries. I'm Lisa Curris with Assisted Living Locators, and we provide personalized guidance to individuals looking for the best senior living options for themselves or for their loved ones, and it's a no-cost service.
Great. Did I see Dave on here?
Here, that's what Lisa said. She covers the south side and I cover the north side. Good morning, everyone.
You raised your hand and said you're sick of Zoom too.
Yes, I did, to be honest, yes.
Yeah. Did I miss anyone? Is there any other sponsor that's on here that I've missed?
Tiffany Camden with Marquette.
Oh, sorry, Tiffany. I'm not used to you. I'm used to someone.
I know.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm the clinical liaison at Marquette. So of course, Marquette, we're a full retirement community, and we offer independent living, assisted living, memory care assisted living, and short-term rehab and long-term care.
That's awesome. So I'm showing we have about 36 participants on here. So that's including our panelists and our sponsors that are here. But I saw some names that I recognize. So welcome, everyone. And just real quick, again, we're going to go through some housekeeping things, and then we'll dive into our panelist questions. So as you came in, if you didn't already mute your mics, they'll be muted, and then your cameras, I think we have it set so that they're off, but I think when you log in you can turn them off too. You get to be like a pro at Zoom, I think, and I automatically have mine turned off when I get on here because you guys don't want to see what's going on at the beginning. Anyway, so your mics are muted, your cameras are turned off. You're welcome to turn your cameras on. We are recording, and we will post this on our website, and we direct people there when they miss and they say, I missed a topic. We'll direct them to our website to rewatch the event. If you're calling in from your phone, I didn't see anybody today, but occasionally we get people who are calling in from their phones, and that's perfectly okay. If you have a question and you're calling from your phone, you'll push the *6 button to ask a question. If you're here on Zoom, you can raise your hand, type your question in the chat box. You can make it to everyone or private if you'd like, or just start waving your hands and eventually I'll see it, or just unmute your mic and start talking. We're really laid back. So we've got a few more events for the year coming up that you're not going to want to miss. November 12th is home health and in-home care. That's from 10 to 11:30. Oh, I forgot that October 22nd, I was thinking that was today's event. October 22nd is actually a community tour. It's a virtual community tour of Zionsville Meadows. So that's a community that we are going to be touring via Zoom, like a virtual bus tour. So, and they're going to have some great prizes and giveaways for you as well. Okay, so I talked about the November 12th. That's the normal Indy Senior Living Series event on Zoom, 10 to 11:30, just like this. And then on November 18th, we have another community tour of Westminster Village. Laura Roman has been with us she's been a sponsor, I think, for 4 years now. And their community is located on the northeast side of Indy. Really beautiful, all levels of care. So you're not going to want to miss that. We talked about our sponsors. Thank you very much again for those who are showing up. And I know it's different behind the screen, but occasionally we'll get into a conversation where we need one of our sponsors. It's a good question that they could answer. So thank you for being here. And then we're going to do a feedback. We'll post a feedback link, and we will give away prizes for when you fill out the feedback. We'll get that feedback and we'll put your name in a drawing for. There's 2 prizes: a door prize from Stacy Bunez with clear captions. She's one of our sponsors, and then we'll do a $25 gift card. We'll mail it out to you. So I think that's it. Are there any burning questions before we get started? All right, we're going to dive in here. So the format is typically, as you know, panel format. We have 3 panelists here. We've got about 5 questions. I'll ask them. And then typically, you know, if we were on a panel, somebody would just start talking. I will, I'll just, I guess, call on whoever I see. I see Jerry here, Jeff, and Chris. Oh, hi. Sorry, I'm looking on my screen. I see everybody's face here. I see you. Got it. All right, so we'll dive in, and then I'll just say, you know, Jerry, you want to answer that, or, you know, and then, but if you do, if something pops into your head and you want to talk about that, about if it's on that topic, just pop in and start chatting. So, all righty. Again, if you're or if you're on the Zoom, you can type your questions in. Oh, Sean Gann. Sean, I just saw a message. Hi. I didn't see you. One more sponsor. Go ahead.
Myself here. Hi there. I'm Sean Gann, Director of Sales and Marketing with Sycamore Reserve Independent Living. We are still offering in-person personal tours. So if anybody's interested, please feel free to come by anytime.
Yes, we did an in-person bus tour there recently. It was great. Sorry about that, Sean.
It's fun.
Okay, is Whitney Craig here? Okay. All right. So we're going to dive into the questions. The first question is really easy for everyone. Who are you? What company are you with? And how do you help people plan for long-term care and/or hospice for themselves or loved ones? This is becoming a question that we actually get asked more and more. I just had a client message me and say that they're sort of putting the brakes on buying a house right now because they have to focus on the care of their mother, and long-term care and hospice was mentioned. So let's see. I'm seeing Jerry first, so go ahead. You want to unmute yourself there? Or?
Yep, got it. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Lisa, thank you so much for putting this together. We appreciate this very much. I am Jerry Stortson. I am a hospice care consultant with Seasons Hospice and Palliative Care. I love the title of this event, Living, Dying, and Leaving a Legacy. And that's really what hospice is all about. That's what we do at Seasons. You know, when we work with folks, we want to educate them about living, what their goals are, trying to help them meet those goals before they pass away. You know, the dying process, there's an education that goes with that as well. We truly surround the family, the caregivers, the patient themselves, and really focus on helping them through that process. And leaving a legacy, that's, you know, that's so important. I'm so glad to see that in here, Lisa. People, no matter what walk of life you come from, no matter what your background is, everyone has a legacy. That means so much to family, friends, neighbors, and we want to be there to help leave that legacy. And we'll talk more about that later, I think.
Okay, I see. Chris, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for coming out. My name's Chris Ayers. I'm over here with One Midwest Financial Partners now. Can't imagine a lot of you recognize that name, but maybe you'll recognize One America. So we're an agency of them. You know, I think second tallest building downtown is kind of our claim to fame, how most people know of us. I'm a retirement planner over here, you know, with One Midwest, and some of you might be thinking, why is a retirement planner talking to me about long-term care? As I got into this industry, I quickly figured out there are two pieces that go into a successful retirement plan. You kind of have the piece that's going to help you get rich, right? It's your assets that build your wealth. But on the other side of it, you got to have the protective side of things, those assets that are going to minimize the risk of, that possibility of you becoming poor. So how I implement long-term care kind of in my planning is I always think about, and I ask this question a lot, what is the one thing that can really screw up a successful retirement plan? And I'll give you a second. I didn't initially think about it, but isn't it an unforeseen health event? And as we get into it, I'm going to ask for some collaboration. Jeff, as you mentioned earlier, you're helping people plan for that $8,000 a month expense. You think about that. If you're staying in a facility or need care for 5 years, if you're paying $8,000 a month, let's just call that $96,000, right? $100,000 a year. That's $500,000. Oh my God. So as I think about the financial side of things, if there are ways that we can be proactive, plan ahead of time so we can leverage our dollars while we're younger to make sure when that time comes, I'm not dealing with an $8,000 expense. That's kind of what I do to try and help people. So that's my 2 cents. Hopefully, as we get into the other questions, I'll be able to bring some value to the table. So I'm excited to be here. And again, Lisa, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Chris. All right, Jeff, you're on.
All right. Well, I'll dispense with any additional introduction since I kind of went through that earlier. So just I would kind of describe, the general process for the folks I'm working with. I kind of alluded to when I introduced myself. Unfortunately, still get a good deal of clients coming in who are in a crisis. They need the care right away. And the good news is there's still a lot I can do to help protect assets, but I can do a lot more for folks that reach out long before that long-term care need arises. And so I'm often working with families to plan for that event of, if I need long-term care, what can I do to protect assets in the future? Attorneys used to make their living in my field off of how do we protect assets from death taxes? Well, those tax rates, those exemptions are now so high, it affects very, very few people. Matter of fact, I haven't worked with anyone to do any death tax planning in probably 15 years. With that said, the biggest single expense that may jeopardize someone's life savings is long-term care. Chris just alluded to the fact that statistics tell us that most people will need at least 3 years of care. That's $300,000. 5 years is Chris, that's $500,000. And how do folks afford that? Particularly if there's an interest in how do I protect my assets so that they're there to supplement me if I need them, and how do I protect so I leave they're there to leave to somebody else when I pass away. So my favorite cases are working with family farmers. I'm a son of a third generation farmer, so anytime I can help protect the farm in those situations are ideal. But to make a long story short, what we're generally doing is preparing an estate plan centered around protecting assets from that future long-term care need. And that might be, we'll have a discussion about self-funding. Is that something you can do? If not, would you like, or you want to insure that risk through some sort of long-term care insurance product? And I'm hoping Chris will be able to tell us about all the different variety of options out there where we've got a lot going on. And then of course, the third thing is public benefits, which nearly 2/3 of us still require those to help pay for long-term care. So that's kind of what we're doing in a nutshell. I will add that it also is very important to me, since we have legacy in the title, to talk about those non-financial things that are a legacy for your families. And I've done a couple webinars, and I've got some information on my website that kind of talks about those things beyond the money. What do you want to be known for? What are those values you want to pass along? What are those things that were important to you that should be passed to the next generation. So we always got to consider that as part of legacy. I think we get wrapped up in money too much sometimes. So thank you.
Yes, I agree. We do get wrapped up in money, and these aren't like really fun topics to talk about anyway, but they're necessary topics. And I think in our Indy Star article that went out on Sunday, part of the planning process is so that our loved ones can go through the grieving process without having the added stress of figuring out what it was that we wanted, or how we would have done things or had things, or when we become incapacitated or unfortunately pass. So leaving out that guesswork so that our family members and other loved ones can fully grieve and just focus on that is sort of a gift and a legacy in and of itself, in my mind. So, okay, great. Thank you, panelists. I'm looking for questions. I'm looking over here live on Facebook. If you've got a question, type it in there and I'll ask it here and we'll get it answered from our panelists. And then if you're on your phone, *6, and if you're on the Zoom meeting, just type it in the chat there. You can type it to everyone. You can type it to an individual, or just unmute yourself and shout it out. Next, we will go to question number 2 then. I don't see any questions. So this one says, if my loved ones or I were in the beginning phases of planning for care options, what is the most important thing to consider? I think that we a lot of times go straight to money and how we're going to pay for the care. And that was an interesting statistic that you said, Jeff, about 2/3 of people still use, public resources to help. So we'll start with Jerry. I see Jerry here first. So go ahead.
Hello, thank you for that. So, the planning for death, many times we don't know how to do that. It's a, a very scary kind of thing to do. Sometimes it just never happens. But with the hospice industry, we really like to help doctors understand when a patient is hospice appropriate. We like to educate those patients and those caregivers, those power of attorneys, how to plan for this. It's a very, very difficult time. So we're always there embracing everyone within that family, helping them through that process. Education is so critical with all of this. I think that that's something with hospice that just needs to be done more and more, and in such a large way. So, in planning for putting someone on hospice services, again, it's a very difficult decision that can be done, but what we focus on are truly the quality of life at the end of life. We want people to reach the goals. We want to help them reach the goals that they have out there. So maybe, here it is mid-October, maybe someone's got a granddaughter that's getting married in December, or there's a birthday right around the corner, or a birth that's going to be happening soon. And that's a goal for someone. We work with people that are on hospice services to help them get to that goal. We really want to give them the quality of life that they deserve. So, again, it's education, Lisa, was what it comes down to. Education and embracing everyone within that process.
Okay, Chris, I saw you shaking your head with some of those things that Jerry was talking about.
I absolutely love some of the things you just said. I'm actually glad you went first because, Lisa, as you just mentioned, I feel like, and I agree with it, the first thing everyone's minds like go to is how am I going to fund this, the financial side of things. And Jerry, you're bringing some perspective to me, and this is why I'm excited to be here, because some of those things I don't necessarily think about. I got to be honest, like I'm in the financial world. My mind goes towards the money side of things. I'm not the one who's on the front lines dealing with, if someone's in a facility, sounds like you're that personal touch on that side, dealing with it on the day to day. So it opens my eyes to, hey, because some of my answers are different, from what you think. And now when we're talking about what are the most important things to consider, and what it's listed as the one most important, I don't know if I can answer it in one. Jeff, when you talk, I think you might be the same way. There's not really like one piece. Now, when I think of planning for the future, when we are being proactive, I hate to give you that answer, but it depends. What is the most important thing? There are a couple things that come to my mind. Now, as Jerry, you've been talking, you want to help people reach their goals. I think that is a great way to think about things. When we do planning, I like to work backwards, right? I want to understand, okay, with this protection aspect of things, what are you trying to protect? Are there certain assets? Is there a certain amount? As Jeff mentioned, let's just use that $8,000 a month example. Say that is the cost of what, care is going to be down the line when you think you might need to participate in that. Well, if you were trying to cover $8,000, that's where we need to start. If you're trying to cover half of that, that's where we need to start. I'm not going to give you like a one size fits all. You just do this and you're good. No, we need to work backwards. I need to understand, what are you trying to protect? With that, what assets are you trying to protect? How old are you? When do you think you will need care? If I'm talking to a 40-year-old, which isn't unrealistic, last week, we were working with someone who, he was a football player. He has a history of kind of mental illness. He understands that he is at risk in the future. Now, I can't say I've met too many 40-year-olds who are being proactive in that way, but he understands that 25 years down the line, if we're being realistic, right, 65 is probably the earliest he might need some form of care. That's a little bit different than someone who's already in their 60s planning for maybe the next 5, 10 years. That's what comes to my mind. And then, looking at your options, and Jeff, I want to get your input on this. I might ask you to unmute. Because a common hesitation I see when I'm talking about long-term care, planning for the future, is the idea of use it or lose it. Do you ever deal with that, Jeff, as you help others?
I do, and when folks are looking at the long-term care insurance option, I've kind of made it a point here over the last few years to discuss the different variables outside of just use or lose it, because I think that was a big turnoff, despite having partnership plans. And I know we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, and I'll be glad to fill in gaps here, but despite having things like partnership plans, which have some incentive to purchase those policies, it's still that use it or lose it model a lot of people just aren't real keen to. And so and then you get along with the premiums involved with some of those policies. It's a lot of people look at, okay, $3,000 a year in policy premiums starting in my 50s, and I may not need this till 80s. Does it make more sense to throw that into an investment and build it? There's just lots of stuff to look at there. So with those hybrids, and I'll boot it back to you, with those hybrids, I think there is a little more incentive, or a little more, I guess, a little more motivation to look at an insurance product when there's a potential of getting something back out of them.
Right. And what I was getting at with that is, as we're planning for the future, and I just wanted to get your input on that, because as I see that, I just wanted to know, hey, do you see that as you work with people on the same thing? Jerry, it almost goes back kind of to what you were saying. It's understanding your options, and it really goes back to education. Whether, it's someone you trust, a family member, someone who's dealt with it, understanding, hey, that use it or lose it concept, self-funding. You got to understand what you have at your disposal, as you plan for your future. So elaborated a little bit heavily on that. Jeff, thanks for your input. And I guess I'll pass it off to you now. Lisa, I'm taking your spot. Sorry.
No, that's okay. We did have a couple of questions come in as we're sitting here. One is, we'll just go down the line here. We have a few, and just to answer how you can. One is from Lynn. She says, I have heard of asset-based long-term care as an alternative to long-term care insurance. What is this?
So I can speak for One America. I can't speak for other companies who are doing something similar. We call it asset care. It's just, I think of it as repositioning. So you have some of your assets, and this is something I probably should have mentioned that is important, kind of goes into your funding options when you're looking at long-term care. So Jeff, as you mentioned, the premium piece of an insurance kind of solution, a lot of people might just think, hey, I got to come out of pocket with that. Not necessarily the case. When you're talking about asset care, you might use a piece of your assets that you've saved up. So let's talk about a traditional IRA. So hopefully I'm not going over anyone's head with this, individual retirement account. It's just like your retirement savings. Maybe a piece of that you're not using for income at the moment. It's just kind of sitting there. It might be growing a little bit, but we're not using it. Well, maybe we reposition some of those assets to take care of this long-term care need that we've, expressed. That's what comes to my mind when I think of asset care. It's repositioning money that we have somewhere else for a goal that we now understand, hey, if we don't take care of this, we might not be in a great spot. Am I making sense with that? That's kind of my little breakdown of asset-based long-term care.
Yeah, so in my mind, that's just using maybe income from rental properties, or the IRA that you mentioned, or maybe an inheritance or something like that.
Right. And like I said, it completely depends on where, who you're working with, because, maybe it's an HSA as well, right? A health savings account, 401k, IRA, like you mentioned, rental properties. I think the biggest thing to take away from that is repositioning, reallocating a piece of your assets, which you are not utilizing, to take care of a need, this long-term care need that we're kind of talking about.
There's another question from, I think this is Gary. Can someone speak on Medicare and hospice status? On how Medicare and hospice status work together, or don't? And then Jeff, I'll toss it over to you if you had any more to say on that panel question too.
On what Chris just referenced?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Go ahead. I
think he summarized that well. I don't have anything to add to it. Actually, I would defer to Jerry more on the how Medicare works with hospice than me. I mean, I can go through the legal, but she's in the trenches there and probably knows more about how to connect it than I do.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry. It's Gary and Sally. Go. I keep missing you, Sally, but if you want to say anything too, chime in there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is Jerry. I was just going to say that hospice is a benefit of Medicare. So with Seasons Hospice, if you have traditional Medicare, that service is a benefit that you're entitled to. It's out there for you. If you have a replacement policy, a supplement policy, maybe you're younger and you don't have Medicare, your insurance typically has got some benefit, hospice benefit to it. So when we look at a person's insurance, we run a verification, we run a check, and then we're able to tell them if they've got something other than traditional Medicare, we're able to tell them if there are things not covered, if there's any co-pays.
Okay, so to me, it sounds like almost you're checking the insurance, kind of like a doctor's office does for us, which is, by the way, a benefit. They don't necessarily have to check our insurance and file our insurance for us. So you're sort of doing that
That is correct.
on the Medicare side, and that's how they work together. Okay.
Yes.
Anything more on that? And then we have one more question from our audience members. Okay, so Phyllis says, if one has tried to purchase long-term care insurance in the past and were denied, what are the chances that things have changed enough that a different outcome is now possible? I know
Hey, Chris, I'm going to jump in real quick. I want you to address this, but I want to address just a quick fun story. So a few years ago, I was speaking and this question come up, and the person said, well, I've had some pre-existing conditions, and I'm in my 70s, and I said, you're not going to qualify. There's no way you'd pass underwriting. And one of your colleagues was in the audience and said, hey, wait a minute. I think she can. We've got a product. So I'm just, there's a softball. I just setting that up for you. So
that's nice. I love it.
With that, I'm going to say it a couple of times. It depends, because you have to know someone's personal situation, right? What are the pre-existing conditions? How long ago were they? What's the time frame been? But with that, kind of as I stated in the other section, know your options, because one provider might not have qualified you doesn't mean another doesn't have a different opinion. So being able to not, I guess you can call it shopping around, looking at, different carriers, providers, whatever, because I've seen it before. One company says, I don't like that person, they're denied. But as Jeff just mentioned, there's an example of, oh no, hey, we'll take you, we trust you, kind of thing. So with that, I'm giving you kind of the concept, but to answer that for you personally, we need a little bit more information. Now, don't put that in the comment box right now.
Yeah.
Question for after.
Yeah, I was going to say too, a lot of these questions, the answer could be, well, it depends, because we all have a different way that we want to live our last years. We have a different financial situation. We have different goals, those types of things. So if somebody wanted to explore their options, what does a consultation look like for each one of you?
Well, I guess I can go. Typically, I have a consultation process in which we begin by gathering data from our clients, that kind of personal information, financial information. What are your goals? I then use that to kind of identify issues myself, and then we get together I allocate up to a couple hours. We may not need all of that, but a couple hours just to review. If I got all that information ahead of time, we can really focus on your goals in that meeting. Typically at the end of the meeting, we come up with a plan, and that plan, if you implement it, I do charge a fee for the consultation process, but that's just a down payment on the plan. And most folks go that direction. So
I'll piggyback off Jeff, and I'll say this because it sounds like my process is very similar to his. Whether you talk with one of us, whoever you talk to, find someone who's going to take you through that, get the data, understand what your goal is, make sure this is appropriate for you. Do not find someone who is going to push a product on you. I cannot reiterate that enough. Because, and I haven't dealt with it personally too much, Jeff, you've probably been around a little bit longer than I have. You've probably seen some people who will do that.
I think he's calling you old, Jeff.
No, I'm saying I'm younger, that's it. But with that being said, find someone who will talk you through, before you even get into solutions, what are you looking for? What's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? I think that is the biggest thing whenever you're talking about a consultation, a fact finder, data gathering, whatever it is.
That's good. Jerry, did you want to add anything, or Sally?
I'm happy to. I love that the two of you just talked about goals and collecting data. We do that as well in the hospice industry, just in a very different light. But our collection of data is really understanding the life that someone has had, their hobbies, the number of children and grandchildren and great grandchildren. We want to get to know them. Are they a veteran? What was a day in their life like? So we're collecting that data. We're doing that research when we sit down and talk with families and patients. And then again, looking at the goals. Are there some goals that we want to help them obtain before their last days? The quality of life, I can't stress that enough. My heart just breaks, Lisa, for people that are not on hospice. So many times their pain isn't being managed. They're not reaching some of the goals that they are passionate about. Seeing that grandchild being born, or celebrating a birthday or an anniversary, whatever that is. So we're really passionate about the goals and about quality of life and working with people to get them through that next phase.
That's good. Yeah, I would say, there was a time in my own life I didn't think of these things as sort of, I guess, goals or things that I should have goals for. I mean, to have a goal to like die a certain way is just, it seems weird, but again, especially for all those control freaks out there, I don't think we have any on this video, right? No control freaks. I mean, this is like the ultimate last way to take control, right? It's just types of planning, these strategies. You can call it a strategy too if you're a strategic person. Go ahead, Jeff.
So I'll add, I mean, this is probably the most important thing to plan for. And I get a lot of calls that say, I want to schedule an appointment with Jeff because I want to put together my will. And that's great. We can do that. We can talk about divesting your assets, dividing them when you pass away, and all those good things of protecting them from this beneficiary and so on. But that doesn't take care of you. And I always start with explaining to clients, we'll do that, but I don't do that in a vacuum. We want to do a comprehensive plan. And what I mean by that is you're leaving out the most important piece. Who's your team to take care of you if you're incapacitated? And do they have the authority to make those decisions and follow your instructions? And do they have an understanding of what you want? All of those things are more important than the will and stuff. That'll take care of itself. So that always gets skipped, but that's not the thing that should be skipped. That's where we should start. Who's your team? What are your goals and instructions to them on what to do if there's a crisis? And do they have the authority to make that happen? So powers of attorney, healthcare advance directives, trusts if they're needed. Those are the things that become more important than that will. So just want to add that because it kind of relates to the conversation here on planning.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. And I think it was like meeting with you, Jeff, for my own consultation where it really became like, okay, well, there's strategy and there are goals to all of this. And you kind of do need a team, especially if you are maybe single or widowed or widower. Who's going to be making decisions for you? A perfect stranger or somebody who knows you? So I think that became clear when I sat down with you for our and I think my whole point, I came in just like what you're saying, like I need a will, I need this, and like you asked questions that made me think of things I hadn't even thought of. So I think getting a team of professionals on board, because this is what you do every single day. You know the questions, because sometimes we don't know what we don't know, so we don't even know what questions to ask. So, well, this seems like, it's kind of not. It's a creepy topic or cringy topic, whatever, but it's a must. So we have another question in the chat box from Lynn. She says, and I was going to ask you this to explain this, Jerry, so I'm glad that somebody asked this. What's the difference between hospice and palliative care? I was just going to say, tell us what hospice is, because I think there may be some people on here, and this was me at one time, who had a different idea of what hospice is altogether.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate the question. It's a great question, and sometimes it's so confusing. So with palliative care, that's a service of which we offer that can actually begin at diagnosis and run with treatment. Hospice typically is after treatment is done. So let me give you a scenario with that, and then I'm going to tell you how we handle this. So with hospice, typically, if they have a diagnosis of end-stage renal failure and they're going to dialysis every other day, typically with hospice would say, once you stop going to dialysis, hospice can begin. Maybe you've got somebody that's got cancer and they're going through chemo treatments. Again, typically, hospice is going to say, once you end those treatments, hospice can begin. At Seasons Hospice, we offer something that's pretty unique in the hospice industry out there. It's called open access. What that means is we look at every single potential patient as an individual. It's case by case basis. So we look at them in their entirety. We look at what's going on. So with an example of maybe somebody that's on TPN, again, most companies are going to say you'll have to stop. Yeah. It's your nutrition, a type of nutrition. You're going to have to stop that in order to come onto hospice. We're going to say to that person, whether it's chemo treatments or dialysis, whatever the case may be, again, and this is case by case, it's not something we do 100% of the time, but we will say, are there goals? Is there a goal? Today, is October the 8th. Is there a goal that you want to reach? Maybe it's, you've got an anniversary coming up and it means so much to you to be able to participate in that anniversary. We're going to allow you to continue that treatment to hit that goal. And then our agreement with you is once we get you to that goal, that you end that chemo or you stop that dialysis. So this is a fabulous program. It's rather unique in the hospice world out there. I absolutely love this side of Seasons and what we do. There is no eligible patient that we leave behind. We look at helping absolutely every single person however we can. So it was a great question. I was glad to see that asked.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask, for the benefit of our audience, hopefully there's someone else out there thinking this, a really kind of a raw question here. Because this is kind of about what I got a text about from a client of mine. Her mother has stage 4 cancer. She's going through chemotherapy, and she will do her treatment and then start hospice care. So in my head, the treatment is to make somebody just feel as comfortable as possible, to get them to some event that they're hoping to get to before they pass. Is that an accurate?
It is. Absolutely, it is. So with hospice, it's really about quality of life, about offering comfort, managing that pain, helping the family keep their loved one at home if that's where they want to be. But yes, it's absolutely about managing all of that.
And so then let's say, they made it to their granddaughter's, the birth of their granddaughter, and they got to meet their granddaughter. And so now we're going to stop chemotherapy or dialysis or whatever it was that was keeping us comfortable and keeping our bodies functioning. And we're going to move into like just getting us as comfortable as possible. And so that we're prepared to pass, right? I mean,
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Managing that pain, keeping that person comfortable, helping the family, the loved ones surrounding them understand what they're going to see as far as changes with the body. Sometimes it's very, to watch somebody in their final days and their final hours, there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress with that. Folks don't know what to expect. Someone may ask, are they suffering? Are they in pain? They might see them gasping a little bit. And so we're there to educate them and let them know that, this is the body's way of shutting down, and this is a process, and this is what you're going to see. Our nurses are at the loved one's side, walking them through this and letting them know this is part of the dying process. This is the body shutting down.
mm-hmm. So did we answer your question, Lynn? What is the palliative care that's for care for a specific diagnosis? Is that right, Jerry?
And well, no, palliative care can not necessarily be for a specific diagnosis. It's just that it can start at diagnosis and it allows for those treatments to continue. Hospice care generally does not allow for those life-saving treatments to continue. Again, with Seasons, we're a little bit unique with an open access program where if that person has a goal that they're looking to meet, we can allow them those life-saving treatments until they hit that goal. And again, that's not 100%. I'm not saying we do that every single time, but we look at every single person and help the absolute best we can.
In an individual case, yeah, sure.
It's individual, it's case by case, yes.
Yeah, and this is, I so wish you were in person, because this is just a topic that, you don't want to sit around the dining room table at Thanksgiving talking about, but it's really necessary, and we have to pay our taxes and we're going to die, right? Those are the two things that are for sure going to happen in our lives. So,
and Jeff and Chris touched on people come to them and they plan for their death. They put all kinds of things in place, the financial piece, they may get their burial plot, they may purchase a casket. I mean, there is planning that goes into that, but at some point we don't really grasp the actual physical dying portion of it. And that's where I want to educate people. You're right. This is such a lengthy topic. I have spent 2 and 3 hours with families before because there's just so many questions that they have and so much information to provide. And it's truly my goal to educate folks. I want them to make whatever decision they come to based on good solid information. I want to answer every question that they possibly have.
Yeah, that's good. Some of you know, my daughter Helen is named after my grandma, and sort of how I got into this, to helping seniors downsize when they want to move from their one home to maybe a smaller, lower maintenance type of home, was because watching my grandma and just inadvertently becoming an advocate for her. But my daughter was named after her, and I swear she waited to die until she met my daughter. She had a virus. She came from the hospital with the virus to the care facility that she was at in Florida. And so my daughter couldn't go down and see her that first time that I went. But then when I went the second time, she was all healed and better, and she got to meet her. And she told my aunt, take the pictures down that were in front of her. They were of my kids. And
Head south toward Meadow Drive.
And and then she passed like the week after she met my daughter. So I think there's maybe in terms of goals, when you talk about goals, maybe that was a goal for her to, meet her. And yeah, so cool.
And Lisa, we've been talking a lot about, death, but even goals surrounding long-term care is a good discussion to have with your family. I kind of always feel like it's a disservice if I put together a healthcare advance directive and say, okay, your daughter has the authority to sit by the bedside and listen to what the doctors are saying, and if you can't make decisions for you. But if you've never had a conversation with her about, what kind of long-term care do you want? Do you want to be at home? Would you prefer assisted living? Is it more important for you to protect an inheritance for your family, or would you rather just spend every last penny to stay in your choice of long-term care? Have those discussions. I try to pull those out of folks because I want to know that. So years down the road, when the families come to see me, I can say, well, you know what? Mom's primary goal was to stay home. Let's see how we can do that. And then secondary is preserving a legacy. Those are, how does all that fit in? So kind of dovetails with all of this stuff here.
Yes, it does. And things can get a little bit hairy there. If we haven't been specific about what we want, they can get really, really messy sometimes when we're dealing with lots of family members. So unfortunately.
I just like to add in there too that it's really good for people to think about the DNR, the do not resuscitate, before they get to the point of, making those decisions in an emergency situation.
Yeah, under duress. Yeah, when we're like in a good mental space, mind space, and we can make those decisions. I think then we know, that's what they wanted. That's, so I want to get to this other question because I know a lot of people ask this and are wondering. So it's question number 3. I'm on a limited budget. What are the most cost-effective ways to plan and implement long-term care for myself or my loved ones?
I got to go first.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, the first thing to recognize, if you're thinking long-term care, this is an asset protection plan that you're doing. So, if you have to dig in, I often see this. I don't have the income to pay for, but you're protecting assets. So if you have to use some of your assets to invest in protecting those, that may be the way. That's the way to finance this. It's the way to think about it, not as a line item on your monthly budget, for example. With that said, I also recognize that not everyone can afford my services, even on my lowest level of service. For documents, I got competition out there on documents. LegalZoom. Before that, you could go to Office Depot and pick up a set. That's not to say that those things aren't useful. I mean, it does not to say they can't be used, but I always caution folks that I see a lot of LegalZoom and stuff being used that aren't signed appropriately or aren't quite fitting the situation. So my biggest piece of advice is this. I got two things. If you can't afford the planning with an attorney, see if you cannot work with an attorney to just check off on what you've been able to put in place. So maybe that attorney's not putting together your plan. I mean, and when I say I make my living off of my advice and my counsel around the plan. The documents, they're great. I've got 21 years of my blood, sweat, and tears put into these things. I'm pretty proud of my product, but as far as the tangible part, but it's the intangibles that I'm providing as far as a service is concerned. But if you can't just afford that, at least have a local attorney check off on, did I sign this correctly? Did I get enough witnesses? Is this notarized right? Because those systems are designed to spit out a product to you. They're not there to make sure that it's correct. And they're really not there to make sure that it's appropriate to your needs. In addition, if you are of limited income, there are legal services available. Particularly, there's legal services for the aged called the Senior Law Project. They're both state and private funded. I donate money to them every year to help folks who cannot afford, a Jeff, for example. And they do some of the similar work that I do, just on a more budgetary basis. So
I think I'll kind of piggyback off of a lot of the stuff you said. And Jerry, I'm gonna steal your word again, education, understanding what you have at your disposal. So Jeff, as you mentioned, kind of the legal side of things for those who can't afford that fee piece, it goes back to know, hey, you have other options. So speaking for me personally, I just don't do fee-based work. It's not what I do. So while I'm talking about the insurance side of things, the solution side, if you're looking at that limited budget, maybe, hey, I can't pull, out of pocket for this. Go back to, I think, Lynn, you were the one who asked about the asset-based care, understanding, hey, your funding options was the first thing that came to mind. Understanding that money in my right pocket is not the only place that I can fund this. Maybe it's my 401k, my retirement accounts, like I said earlier. I think HSA, you have other things at your disposal, but it goes back to education. You have to know that you have those at your disposal to be able to even make that decision. That's it for me.
Okay, good. I was trying to see if Jerry was going to chime in there. So much stuff there. I typed the Senior Law Project into the chat box in case anyone wanted to look that up. Are there any questions regarding what the two gentlemen have talked about so far? I'm looking on Facebook and in the chat box here, and you don't see. Yeah, thank you, Jeff. The Senior Law Project of Indiana Legal Services, and he's got the number there too for the Indianapolis area. Good. Oh, so one thing that Jeff was saying about the documents and having the documents checked, you and I both, we have a lot of competition with the do-it-yourselfers who want to save money, and that is very respectful. I think that fiscal responsibility is a really good asset to have, but if it costs you more in the long run in terms of not having assets distributed the way that you wanted them to after you passed, or in my case, there's a statistic that for sale by owners sell their house make up like 10 or 11% less than if they would have hired a realtor. I think that the knowledge that we provide is an intangible because we do this every single day. This is our full-time job. We're not, providing legal care for financial advice or real estate advice, and then like cutting hair on the side or, whatever. I look at houses every single day, even when I'm on vacation. And I'm sure that you all are also thinking about and paying attention to things that having to do with your area of expertise every single day. And so what we do provide is the knowledge and the expertise from seeing different cases and different situations over and over and over again. And so we know what to advise so that people can avoid making mistakes that we've seen in the past or maybe even done in the past. So I think that's something that a professional can provide. I had a client, it's been years ago now, but there was a major problem with the sale of real estate because of one signature. It didn't contain a comma trustee after, and it caused some problems in the sale of real estate. So when you mentioned those documents, just having those documents looked at, Jeff, I thought of that immediately. And I mean, it can just get really hairy when it comes to I think deaths, funerals, and weddings. They bring out the crazies in all of us.
Right.
So,
well, I'll add, as far as Medicaid and VA planning, planning to qualify for a public benefit. It's one thing if you're below those resource limits already and you just need to get an application into the agency. And again, there's good arguments to have legal counsel for that. But if you're just there, that's fine. But if you're trying to shelter assets based on what your neighbor said or what you think's the right way or what you found on the internet, please don't, because what happens is you end up investing more for someone to undo that and do it the way that it needs to be done than if you would have contacted someone to begin with. I know that sounds self-serving to me, but I just use an example. I am probably getting ready to go up to Chicago on an appeal on a VA case because someone wanted to file on their own without attorney help, and they provided misinformation. That basically they provided information that was interpreted incorrectly by the VA, and VA has just gotten their latches in that and will not look at it the correct way. And so they're probably going to pay me to go to an appeal hearing in Chicago to fix that misinterpretation 4 years ago. So good example of, they would have had the benefit 4 years ago and had me out of the picture a long time ago if we had worked on that together in the beginning.
Yeah, we see it all the time. Michelle and I can attest in our side of things. We see it all the time. People try to cut corners or save a buck, or for whatever reason, their neighbors gave them some legal advice or, some real estate or financial advice. And then it ended up costing them in the long run, whether it's time, money, or, maybe even something worse. So,
hey, I get it. I like to work on stuff around the house, but there's been times I've bit off more than I can chew, and I've been there. I've done that. I've had to call a plumber in to fix my work. So, and I paid more than if I just called the plumber to begin with. I get it, but learn from my mistakes and get the professional involved ahead of time.
Yeah, that's good. Sorry, I muted myself. Okay, we're moving on to question number 4. I had an unexpected health scare in my family. Now I'm in an emergency situation. What are my options and how do I proceed? I know this is a sort of a loaded question, and it's a case-by-case scenario. So you're going to say, Chris, it depends. It does depend, but let's just make up a case, just something maybe that you've seen where you've had a client that was in an emergency situation and maybe how you helped them.
And Jeff, I don't want to keep making you go first, but this is kind of these last two questions. I'm not going to defer to you, but I really want to get your insight on this, because my position, kind of, I feel my role in this is to make sure this doesn't happen. If someone gets to this point, you know, if I knew them beforehand, I feel bad because I feel like I did not do my job properly. You mentioned earlier that, you know, you help people kind of in this scenario, and I think you can probably teach me a thing or two. So I want to hear kind of your answer to this, and I'll probably pick up a couple things from it.
Well, as I mentioned in my introduction, a good majority of my practice is helping folks who are in a long-term care crisis. They need something now, and probably have not planned for it to that point till it's presented to them. The good news is there's typically strategies that we can implement to help protect some of those assets, even when there's a crisis. But I'm going to back up a minute. So by the format of your question, Lisa, I'm going to change the facts a little bit, because it says, what are my options?
Got it.
And what if the person is not able to speak? You know, what if they are incapacitated because of that emergency, and they have not planned? Well, then the state of Indiana has written their plan for them at that point. And what I mean by that is, if you don't have a healthcare representative, Indiana has prepared one for you. There's a list under the statute of who can speak for you to make healthcare decisions for you. If you don't have somebody to make financial decisions for you, Indiana's taking care of that. Now, we may have to go through a process for both of those called a guardianship. And a guardianship is a court-ordered appointment of someone to act on your behalf. And there's a process. I mean, it's going to court. It's going to a hearing. It's a judge kind of deciding who's going to speak for you. And Jeff says that he can protect assets, but it's up to the judge to decide, yeah, I think we can do this or we can't do that. So you want to try to avoid those emergency situations, but it's not the end of the world. There's still things we can do. It's just going to be a little more difficult to get there.
Yeah, and I think about it this way, you know, way back when we were in school taking tests, you know, you think the person who studied the night before is probably not as well off as the person who studied, you know, 2 weeks before. So when you get to that emergency situation, Jeff, as you kind of mentioned earlier, it's those ways to, hey, how can I stretch out my assets to help me out in this situation? What can I do, you know, to not fully protect myself, but I'm dealt a certain hand. It's not great. What cards can I play at that point? And Lisa, like you mentioned, yes, it's very case by case. But it's just walking you through what is the hand you're dealt, right? What are the cards you got? And then what plays can we make from there? Jerry, I saw you unmute your mic. You have anything to add to that?
Yeah, thank you. Chris, you and Jeff touched on so many great points. And, you know, for us in the hospice industry, I can't reiterate enough how having those power of attorneys in place, the DNR, really thinking through that, regardless of our age, regardless of our family history, we just never know from day to day, hour to hour, what might happen. You know, you might have that massive heart attack. You might have that car accident that incapacitates you and leaves you in a tragic situation. So we all, it seems like we have a tendency to think that we are just not going to be faced with those kinds of things. And the reality of it is, you're absolutely right. It's like taking the test. You know, we need to be prepared. And that's, again, where all of us on this panel just have to focus on educating people. Lisa, I can't thank you enough for having these panels. This is what the crux of this is educating people. And I'm so grateful to everyone that has joined us to listen to this, and the folks that are going to be seeing this on YouTube and Facebook and places. we want to educate you. We want to be there for you. All of us do.
One thing I was going to say, if you're a sponsor and you're on here, I meant to say at the very beginning, go ahead and throw your information over there in the chat, your name and the company you're with, and if you've got a website you want to use and how people can get a hold of you. Same for the panelist too. We have one more question, and then we're going to put the feedback, the link for the feedback into the chat box so you can be prepared for that. The last question is, I have little or no family members to help me plan for long-term care and hospice needs. What is the best way to proceed so that my wishes are carried out if I become unable to express them to doctors, healthcare workers, and others? So kind of a similar question as the one above, but what if somebody is just, and I mean, we get this a lot, where we're by default, somebody's daughter because they don't have anybody. Michelle and I do. So what are people's options if they don't have anybody?
Well, just remember what I said just a few minutes ago. If you have not taken the time to write down your instructions and find a planning team, a judge who doesn't know you is going to decide who's going to be making decisions for you and is going to be giving his or her blessing on what decisions to make. And they may be completely incongruent with what you would have wanted if you were able to sit there and speak for you. So, if you don't have a family member, it kind of exacerbates the point of getting a plan in place ahead of time. There are professionals that will do this work for you. Particularly on the healthcare side, there are professionals who will serve as a healthcare representative, and they typically, the folks I know will connect with a care manager because they might be lawyers or have a background in something other than healthcare. So they're typically working with a healthcare or geriatric care manager, whether it's in a social work background or a medical background, to help assess and provide information so they can make decisions for you. So there are professionals out there that can serve in that capacity to make healthcare decisions when there's a crisis. But you still want those folks to have an understanding of what kind of care you want to receive when you can't speak for yourself. So planning ahead of time, having those instructions with your team, discussing what you want and getting that into writing is going to be helpful. One thing I'll also add real quick here, a lot of people say, well, I've got a living will and that'll take care of this. Here's the issue with the living will. A living will is a standalone instruction that a doctor's just going to pick up and say, oh, it says, pull the plug. I'm going to go over here and unplug it from the wall. It's not going to happen. Part of that is because the statute says that a doctor only follows that when somebody certifies in writing that you're terminal. And all these doctors have insurance that says, be careful what you're doing here because we don't want a surviving family member to come back and say, hey, they weren't terminal. Why'd you do that? So the doctor's always going to be looking at a team member, always going to be looking for a healthcare representative to help with those decisions. The living will is a great guideline in that situation where both the team and the doctor can refer to, but the doctor just saying, oh, here's my piece of paper. This is my instruction what to do in that situation. Not reality. In addition, there are some substitutes that can be like doctor's orders if you're terminal. It's kind of outside what we can talk about today. But the point, again, I wanted to make is plan early. There are professionals, even if you have no family, friends that you would trust to serve in that role, there are folks that can do that. The key there is just to make sure they understand what your wants and desires are.
Yep, there are actual companies who will act as your daughter or your loved one in the absence of someone else. If you just, you have a really small family, or you never had children, or you're just, you just have some good friends, but you want, even if you do have a lot of people, I've seen people who had a completely separate trustee or executor than a family member, just to keep everything on a level playing field and not to ruffle any feathers. So good. Oh, one thing I wanted to say too, is like a public service announcement. Power of attorneys die when the person dies, right, Jeff?
That's correct. Yes. There are very few things that a power of attorney can do when they die. For the most part, all the stuff they've been doing during lifetime, they can't do the moment you pass away. So that's not a way to do much. You have to go, there's another set of authority that has to be granted through another process at that point.
Perfect. Jeff put his contact information, Chris. I saw some others up here, Dave, Sarah. I put the link to the feedback form in here. When you fill that out, you'll be entered into the drawing. I'll do it again. There's the link again. Oops, sorry, I just sent that to Chris. Everyone.
That's on me.
There you go. So you click that link and give us some feedback. We do take it to heart. We're trying really, really hard to get to in-person events, because they're just they're much more hardier. I mean, while the Zoom, it works and it gets us together and it helps us, educate seniors out there on these types of topics. Ideally, we want to be meeting in person. So I'm going to see if there's any last questions. I saw Stacy Bonas come on here. She's with Clear Captions. She's one of our sponsors, and she's actually going to be giving away one of our door prizes, those baskets that she makes. If you've attended in person, she makes these huge baskets full of all kinds of goodies. So we're going to give away one of her baskets and a $25 gift card also. So 2 winners. Just click the link to fill out the feedback form. And remember, our next events that are coming up, the 22nd is a bus tour for Zionsville Meadows. Our monthly regular panel event is, what day is it again? November 14th, I think. The 12th, I'm sorry, November 12th. And the topic is home health and in-home care. And then we have a tour later on in November of Westminster Village. So we'll send all this information out, and we'll have it in a newsletter form. We sent out a letter also that had all the dates and everything. And if you want to RSVP to any of these events, you can either call 317-731-2289 and just leave a message, or you can visit downsizingindy.com and RSVP for any of those events there. It'll take you to the Eventbrite site. Any last questions? I'm looking here on Facebook. I thank you guys, the panelists and the sponsors again for always participating. One day we'll get back in person, and we'll be so happy to see everybody in person too. But between now and then, just stay healthy, and that's it. And I don't see any more questions. Any other questions?
No, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Last call. Oh, and Michelle put a little tiny URL up there for the feedback form as well, and to register for other events.
Cool.
All right, guys. Well, enjoy the rest of your week, and stay healthy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Lisa.
Right.
See you, Jeff. See you, Jerry.